Hello, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am here in the classroom and I am so tired of this book. It's probably because I have back-to-back books. The Greek mythology I think is helpful. I have not found a single thing that's helpful in here, except for the fact that what it does is it keeps you going to the end of his book. And is that your little hook? Is that your hook? Keeping it mysterious, all kinds of open questions, all the way to the end with likely no answers. Yeah, so guess what we're not going to do? Yeah, we're not going to finish that book. It's not really great. So we're going to take the title down. I started reading this and I thought, this sounds really good. I also have a little note card in it. And I just, as I was picking up to start looking for another book after this one, I remembered that I gave a speech, and I believe I gave the speech for a speech class. And I was just thinking about the class again. Just seeing if anything else came to mind. It says reporters tracked down welfare queen. She had 2 aliases. How many aliases do these people have around me? Minimum 3. Minimum 3. They all had to be higher than the welfare queen for sure. She had 23 public aid checks, which amounted to $8,000. New York fingerprinting has a 1% duplicates. So showing you that all kinds of people have aliases. 1% duplicate in fingerprinting means the names are crossing over or not crossing over, but the fingerprints are. Attention is diverted from evasion and white-collar crime. So in 1993, they lost $150 billion in white-collar crime. 81% of $300 billion went to the savings and loan bailout, and that was in 1993. So this kind of stuff, you know, I mean, I've been reading, you know, I read some other really great books by C.S. Lewis and some other great books by, that were fantasy kinds of books. Maybe not so much fantasy, not my thing, right? It gets really confusing with a lot of characters and they have a lot of cyclopses and just not my thing. Black Looks, Race and Representation by Bell Hooks. I have read some of this. I haven't read all of it. I am very much always drawn to it. So I'm going to start reading this today because I don't want to go back to back. I just don't want to do that. So, copyright 1992. I dedicate this book to all of us who love blackness, who dare to create in our daily lives space of reconciliation and forgiveness, where we let go of past hurt, fear, shame, and hold each other close. It is only in the act and practice of loving blackness that we are able to reach out and embrace the world without destructive bitterness and ongoing collective rage. Holding each other close across differences, beyond conflict, through change is an act of resistance. I'm especially grateful to those who hold me close and do not let me go, to those of you who challenge me to live theory in a place beyond words, To you, Angela, Anthony, Anu, Gwenda, Julie, Karen, Paul, Susan, Valerie, and those unnamed whom my heart remembers. I'm just seeing if there's any mental pictures that come to mind. As you know, I do. Let me go turn off that space heater over there. We are a little warm enough in here. I got some new songs on the audio library. So, because one of them disappeared. That song was called Brontosaurus. That was my son's favorite dinosaur, my younger son's favorite dinosaur, Brontosaurus. Okay. That's a great song, too. Revolutionary attitude, the introduction. Revolutionary attitude. Decolonization constitutes to be an act of confrontation with a hegemonic system of thought. It is hence a process of considerable historical and cultural liberation. As such, decolonization becomes the contestation of all dominant forms and structures, whether they be linguistic, discursive, or ideological. Moreover, decolonization comes to be understood as an act of exorcism for both the colonized and the colonizer. For both parties, it must be a process of liberation from dependency in the case of the colonized and from imperialist, racist perceptions, representations, and institutions which unfortunately remain with us to this very day. In the case of the colonizer, decolonization can only be complete when it is understood as a complex process that involves both the colonizer and the colonized. Samia Nerez, probably. If we compare the relative progress African Americans have made in education and employment to the struggle to gain control over how we are represented, particularly in the mass media, we see that there has been little change in the area of representation. Opening a magazine or book, turning on the television set, watching film, or looking at photographs in public spaces, we are most likely to see images of Black people that reinforce and reinscribe white supremacy. Those images may be constructed by white people who have not divested of racism, or by people of color, Black people, who may see the world through the lens of white supremacy, internalized racism. Clearly, those of us committed to Black liberation struggle to the freedom and self-determination of all Black people must face daily the tragic reality that we have collectively made few, if any, revolutionary interventions in the area of race and representation. Theorizing Black experience in the United States is a difficult task. Socialized within white supremacist educational systems and by a racist mass media, many Black people are convinced that our lives are not complex and are therefore unworthy of sophisticated critical analysis and reflection. Even those of us righteously committed to Black liberation struggle, who feel we have decolonized our minds, often find it hard to speak our experience. The more painfully issues we confront, the greater our inarticulateness. James Baldwin understood this. In the Fire Text Time, he reminded readers that there has been almost no language to describe the horrors of Black life. Without a way to name our pain, we are also without the words to articulate our pleasure. Indeed, a fundamental task of Black critical thinkers has been the struggle to break with the hegemonic modes of seeing, thinking, and being that block our capacity to see ourselves oppositionally, to imagine, describe, and invent ourselves in ways that are liberatory. Without this, how can we challenge and invite non-Black allies and friends to dare to look at us differently, to dare to break their colonizing gaze? Speaking about his recent film, The Camp at Theoroi, African filmmaker Ousmane Sembène explains, "You must understand that for people like us, there are no such things as models. We are called upon to constantly create our models. For African people, Africans in the diaspora, it's pretty much the same. Colonism means that we must always rethink everything. Challenged to rethink, insurgent Black intellectuals and or artists are looking at new ways to write and talk about race and representation, working to transform the image." Dancing on the Edge. I'm watching Dancing on the Edge, and you can really see it there, because even in the viewer's mind, the viewer is me, the viewer. I'll say me. I'm like, why didn't they investigate this? Why didn't they investigate it? And even in the interview, it's just, is this a real, is this what happens after you only get two seasons? Or 1 season, 2 seasons, something like that. So we have to wrap it up with interviews. And that's what happens to the storyline. Because nobody was interested in the fact that the Black woman was killed. And why not? So is that a bunch of people keeping it quiet, which is what you think the whole way through? And then, still in hindsight, it was like, to me, how were they hanging on or, not resolving this case at all? Their resolution, all right, so I've got it. Their resolution was to cast all light on the Black man and then let him go. So, weird stuff. Without a way to name our pain, we are also without the words to articulate our, all right, read that. Speaking out about his recent film, The Camp of Theoroi, African filmmaker, you must understand that people like us are models. We are called upon to constantly create for African American challenge to rethink the insurgent intellectuals. There we go. There is a direct and abiding connection between the maintenance of white supremacist patriarchy in this society and the institutionalization via mass media of specific images, representations of race, of Blackness that support and maintain the oppression, exploitation, and overall domination of all Black people. Long before white supremacists ever reached the shores of what we now call the United States, they constructed images of Blackness and Black people to uphold and affirm their notions of racist superiority, their political imperialism, their will to dominate and enslave. From slavery on, white supremacists have recognized that control over images is central to the maintenance of any system of racial domination. In his essay, Cultural identity and diaspora, Stuart Hall emphasizes that we can properly understand the traumatic character of the colonial experience by recognizing the connection between domination and representation, the ways in which Black experiences. So here's the quote. The ways in which Black experiences were positioned are subjected in the dominant regimes of representation were the effects of a critical exercise of cultural power and normalization, not only in Sed's Orientalist sense, were we constructed as different and other within the categories of knowledge of the West by those regimes. They had the power to make us see and experience ourselves as other. It is one thing to position a subject or a set of peoples as the other of a dominant discourse. It is quite another thing to subject them to that knowledge, not only as a matter of imposed will and domination, but by the power of inner compulsion and subjective confirmation to the norm. Well said. That the field of representation remains a place of struggle is most evident when we critically examine contemporary representations of Blackness and Black people. I was painfully reminded of this fact recently when visiting friends on a once colonized Black island. Their little girl is just reaching that stage of pre-adolescent life where we become obsessed with our image, with how we look and how others see us. Her skin is dark, her hair chemically straightened. Not only is she fundamentally convinced that straightened hair is more beautiful than curly, kinky, natural hair, she believes that lighter skin makes one more worthy, more valuable in the eyes of others. Despite her parents' efforts to raise their children in an affirming Black context, she internalized white supremacist values and aesthetics, a way of looking and seeing the world that negates her value. Now, this is true to a certain extent. I would have been considered, I would say, the opposite. So starting here, I like my beautiful, natural, curly, kinky hair. I don't like straight hair on men or women. It doesn't have to be kinky to the skull for me, right? But it's a better look than that long straight hair for me. So in the end, I did not internalize an idea about skin and hair that's different than my own makeup, right? I like darker skin than I have on me, but I also don't like laying out in the sun. So I have to be on vacation to get my dark skin, right? But I prefer darker skin. So I don't have this natural inclination that the author is talking about, but I also was not raised in a family where, despite parents' efforts to raise children in an affirming Black context, I did not have parents who were affirming of my context, whatever it was, right? I mean, as I said, I had people critical of me, and when I was very young, put makeup on and said, this is what Black can look like. It's your narrative. It's the pictures. These are Black women. I see beautiful Black women, right? So, and lots of beautiful Black women in the same proportion that we see beautiful white women, which are much more common than we see handsome men by a long shot. Holy Jesus. Get a room full of men, 100 men, and how many of them would be considered healthy, good looking? I mean, come on. So, I don't know what's up with the ghostly whatever's going on. But I can keep reading. So yeah, I did not grow up, and it seems to me I was part of the experiment, but the part of the experiment that was, I don't know, got the 1% of the population that was, treated the opposite of what the medical community said, right? Were the recommendations. If you know anything about science, you need to have your, because that's not how they approach vaccines, did they? 100%. 100%. We want 100%. Who does that sound like? Of course, this is not a new story. I could say the same for my nieces, nephews, and millions of black children here in the States. What struck me about this little girl was the depths of her pain and rage. She was angry, and yet her anger had no voice. It could not say, "Mommy, I am upset that all these years, from babyhood on, I thought I was a marvelous, beautiful, gifted girl, only to discover that the world does not see me this way." Often she was acting out, behaving in a manner that in my childhood days would have made older colonized black folks talk about her as evil as a little sapphire. When I tried to intervene and talk with her mother about the need to directly address issues of race and representation, I sensed grave reluctance, denial even, and it struck me that for black people, the pain of learning that we cannot control our images, how we see ourselves, if our vision is not decolonized. And I guess I'm not sure what she means there, but I do think my vision of me has been decolonized. I mean, I've always said I've taken the Ukrainian and Italian, and 25% Mexican explains the way I look. Right? That explains the way I look. If you want to say that whatever part of me is Mexican is also black, whatever, it certainly is a possibility. But in my mind, I was raised darker than the whites in Fremont, Michigan. I was raised as darker than the whites in Fremont, Michigan. That's the way I would explain it. Often it leaves us ravaged by repressed rage, feeling weary, dispirited, and sometimes just plain old brokenhearted. These are the gaps in our psyche that are the spaces where mindless complicity, self-destructive rage, hatred, and paralyzing despair enter. To face these wounds, to heal them, progressive black people and our allies in struggle must be willing to grant the effort to critically intervene and transform the world of image-making authority of place in our political movements of liberation and self-determination, be they anti-imperialist, feminist, gay rights, black liberation, or all of the above and more. If this were the case, we would be ever mindful of the need to make radical intervention. We would consider crucial both the kind of images we produce and the way we critically write and talk about the images. Now see here's offering the solution, and the solution is a radical solution, but not radicalized, not radicalism, not calling in for a radical display of force at all. What is she proposing is radical. We would consider crucial both the kind of images we produce and the way we critically write and talk about images. Now here again, I have seen a decline, a severe decline in black imagery. And I would even say, well, Denzel Washington, okay, well, and then go into, you could go into Asian imagery, but what about Native American imagery? I mean, where does that even exist? It finally exists in Yellowstone. And then you've got every termite, jumping on the bandwagon, because, you know, bandwagons are all of that kind of wood that's falling apart. And it is really termite fill. And, you know, those are our Hittites and our nomads. Just making a connection. Pay attention to our Bookless classroom, would you please? Then you'll know. Okay, so in Black Looks, I critically interrogate old narratives, suggesting alternative ways to look at blackness, black subjectivity of necessity, and of necessity, whiteness. While also exploring literature, music, and television, many of these essays focus on film. The emphasis on film is so central because it, more than any other media experience, determines how blackness and black people are seen and how other groups will respond to us based on their relation to these constructed and consumed images. And so that's what I started to say. It seems to me that in all areas, we have had a complete decline of black representation in film, and I would suggest that's purposeful. You misrepresent us, and you have every authority to represent us in right ways, and you misrepresent us. In the Office, you have Stanley. Now, if there's 11 people in the office, that's an accurate representation. 11%. But you have to have, you know, the representation of white would be 33%, and half of that would be women. More than half of that would be women. So you're not paying attention to all the demographics. So talking specifically about the Office, you had Stanley. And what kind of representation was that? So thinking it through, if you take a look at Cheers, no black representation. Seinfeld, no black representation. Cosby Show, no white representation. And I only raise my eyebrows just to say, how many Cosby shows can you name? Certainly not 1 to every 3 Caucasian, we'll say. So interesting. I think, again, the point I'm making here is it feels purposeful. I mean, think of all of the superhero films being redone over and over and over again. That says to me, black people have, and you know, whatever. If I know Denzel like I know Denzel, he might be a little bit considered darker than maybe he actually is. But I don't know that I know Denzel. Just because I talk about him on a first name basis. You know what I'm saying? In the essay, Black Feminism, the Politics of Articulation, filmmaker Pratibha Parmar states, images play a crucial role in defining and controlling the political and social power to which both individuals and marginalized groups have access. The deeply ideological nature of imagery determines not only how other people think about us, but how we think about ourselves. Many audiences in the United States resist the idea that images have an ideological intent. This is equally true of black audiences. Fierce, critical interrogation is sometimes the only practice that can pierce the wall of denial consumers of images construct so as not to face the real world of image making, so as not to face that the real world of image making is political, that politics of domination inform the way the vast majority of images we consume are constructed and marketed. Now, it's clear that there are Black folk who are still interjecting, but I haven't heard a lot from Stacey Abrams lately. You know, I don't pay a lot of attention to politics. In my mind now, what I'm saying is this, not putting it on Stacey Abrams. I'm saying, to what extent has the Black left government? I mean, in the same ways that I have, and the Mexicans have left this idiocy, this narrative that everybody now knows is fake. Right? Many audiences in the United States resist the idea that images have an ideological intent. This is equally true of Black audiences. Fierce critical interrogation is sometimes the only practice that can pierce... Oh, I already read that. Most Black folks do not want to think critically about why they can sit in the darkness of theaters and find pleasure in images that cruelly mock and ridicule Blackness. That is why many of the essays in Black Looks focus on spectatorship. I ask that we consider the perspective from which we look, vigilantly asking ourselves, who do we identify with? Who do you identify with? Whose image do we love? And if we, Black people, have learned to cherish hateful images of ourselves, then what process of looking allows us to counter the seduction of images that threatens to dehumanize and colonize? And I'm sorry, but Denzel Washington is a perfect example of what she's talking about. When you watch that movie Trafficking, isn't that what it's called? Something like that. It is frightening. It's frightening. And again, I would call into question the color of Denzel's skin, that's for sure. Clearly, it is that way of seeing which makes possible an integrity of being that can subvert the power of the colonizing image. It is only as we collectively change the way we look at ourselves and the world that we can change how we are seen. In this process, we seek to create a world where everyone can look at Blackness and Black people with new eyes. In 1962, at the age of 32, only a few years before her unexpected death from cancer, Black woman playwright Lorraine Hansberry wrote a letter in response to a white farm boy living on a rich, fertile farm on the Mason-Dixon line, who was concerned that Black people were becoming too militant. She answered that the condition of our people dictates what can only be called revolutionary attitude. In the letter, she also declared the acceptance of our present conditions is the only form of extremism which discredits us before our children. Many Black folks refuse to look at our present condition because they do not want to see images that might compel them to militance. But amen, Bell, amen. But militance is an alternative to madness, and many of us are daily entering the realm of the insane. Like Pascola and Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, Black folks turn away from reality because the pain of awareness is so great. For everybody, anyone who is trying their best to provide a solution has a goodness and a purity in them that cannot see the full picture. And that does not mean that those who can see the full picture are not pure. But I would say, and I would gather that they would agree with, they are less innocent, right? Yet it is only by becoming more fully aware that we begin to see clearly. We experience our collective crisis as African American people within the realm of the image. Whether it is the fate of homeless folks encountered in city streets or small town alleyways, the wandering gaze of the unemployed, the sight of our drug addicted loved ones, or some tragic scene from a film that lingers in the mind's eye, we see that we are in trouble. I can see the images of young black men brutally murdering one another that were part of the fictional narrative of John Singleton's film Boys in the Hood. These images were painful to watch. That is how it should be. It should hurt our eyes to see racial genocide perpetuated in black communities, whether fictional or real. Yet in the theater where I saw this film, the largely black audience appeared to find pleasure in these images. This response was powerful testimony, revealing that those forms of representation in white supremacist society that teach black folks to internalize racism are so ingrained in our collective consciousness that we can find pleasure in images of our death and destruction. I saw it. I think I started watching it in the theater, and then I had to walk out. And it was years before I would watch it again. It was too much to have a self-fulfilling prophecy right in front of your eyes like that without understanding, as she is pointing out, the consequences of that self-fulfilling prophecy. You think it's radicalism in a violent way. It cannot be. It's just the flip side of the same coin. What can the future hold if our present entertainment is the spectacle of contemporary colonization, dehumanization, and disempowerment, where the image serves as a murder weapon? Unless we transform images of blackness, of black people, our ways of looking and our ways of being seen, we cannot make radical interventions that will fundamentally alter our situation. And now I actually think we're at a point where we can clearly see that the racial groups are so divided that race no longer becomes the question. And really then it is who is on the side of repair. In what way are you going to promote reparations? Which I'm suggesting is simply repair. Right? We all need to repair. We all need to repair all this damage that's been done by this concept that there is something beyond the human race. The struggle needs to include non-black allies as well. Images of race and representation have become a contemporary obsession. Commodification of blackness has created a social contest where appropriation by non-black people of the black image knows no boundaries. If the many non-black people who produce images of critical narratives about blackness and black people do not interrogate their perspective, then they may simply recreate the imperial gaze, the look that seeks to dominate, subjugate, and colonize. This is especially so for white people looking at and talking about blackness. In his essay, The Miscegenated Gaze, black male artist Christian Walker suggests, if non-hierarchical society are ever to fully understand and embrace their own self-identity and their own miscegenated gaze, they will have to embrace and celebrate the concept of non-white subjectivity. Their ways of looking must be fundamentally altered. They must be able to engage in the militant struggle by black folks to transform the image. So what I'm saying is could you take that same look from your own brothers? I think that's what it sounds like it's saying to me. As a radical intervention, we must develop revolutionary attitudes about race and representation. Revolutionary attitudes, not behavior. So, and it doesn't mean not behavior. It means a revolutionary attitude about how you engage in your behavior to be revolutionary. What's not revolutionary about an attitude is violence. That's not revolutionary. So hear what she's saying. To do this, we must be willing to think, all right, we got it. We must be willing to take risks. The essay on black looks are meant to challenge and unsettle, to disrupt and subvert. They may make some folks get mad, go off, or just feel upset. That is the idea, to provoke and engage. Like that photographic portrait of Billie Holiday by Moneta Sleet I love so much, the one where instead of a glamorized image of stardom, we are invited to see her in a posture of thoughtful reflection, her arms bruised by tracks, delicate scars on her face, and that sad, faraway look in her eyes. When I face this image, this black look, something in me is shattered. I have to pick up the bits and pieces of myself and start all over again, transformed by the image. So let's take a look at that. How about? I think I can call it up actually pretty readily. Isn't that what it said? I thought it would come up, but it didn't pop. It didn't pop up. Sleet. It makes me think she looks like family. It does. Whoa, I didn't mean to do that. That's for sure. I don't know though, tracks on her arms, aren't they supposed to be in her vein? I don't know. Okay, that's the introduction. We're going to start with chapter 1 when we come back on Tuesday. It has been day 254 in the reading room. We have just, like that, switched books. And, I'll probably start reading it from the beginning some other time, and I hope not. I lost our space there, but, That's why I said I'll probably start reading it some other time and pick up and reread and whatever. But I don't know. I hope not, because it really just I hate those books that take you on some kind of travel that's supposed to be so enlightening, and it's only enlightening if you tell me where your philosophy of enlightenment lies. But if it lies in my own head and you're taking me on some trip that is just a bunch of nonsense, then I guess it is just to read your book, and it really is sort of a Timothy Leary kind of an approach. So, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks so much for joining me here in the reading room, where we have started a new book without any warning. Like I pulled the rug right out from underneath you. Bam! No more C.S. Lewis. Bam! Bell hooks. Take that. Thanks so much for joining me. That's Billie Holiday right there. And it is December 11th. It is day 284 here in the classroom. And this is Dr. Annette Feravich, where I'm making every effort to get your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Thanks for joining me.